WADR, West Africa Democracy Radio.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Monrovia, 1 p.m. in Abuja. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to NEWSLINK. Here are the top stories. The Malian transitional authorities meet with MINUSMA over the handing over of bases amid intense fighting in the north. Senegalese opposition politician Sonko recovers from coma but remains at risk of relapse, according to his lawyer. The Gambia and Senegal strengthen bilateral ties by signing cooperation agreements at the Trade and Economic Forum in Dakar. And Nigeria's Labour Party calls for intervention as it rejects the Supreme Court's ruling affirming President Tinubu's victory.
What transpired in Nigeria since February 25th presidential election is a clear testament that our institutions are not working and that we may be sliding towards dictatorship. It is very clear that the executive and the judiciary have all been hijacked.
Stay with us for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with NEWSLINK.
Thank you for joining us and a warm welcome to our listeners in the Gambia, Ghana and Liberia. Let's begin in Mali, where the UN mission known as MINUSMA has announced its evacuation from the Kidal camp by next week. On Thursday, the United Nations peacekeeping force said it had evacuated its non-essential personnel from the town, which is controlled by armed independence groups. This early withdrawal of the UN mission from the town of Kidal is due to what it termed the considerable deterioration in the security situation in the area. This area, like others in the north, has seen increased fighting between the pro-independence armed groups and regular army for control of the bases left by MINUSMA. A more added has on this report by WADR's Aliyu Cham in Bamako.
The MINUSMA camp in the town of Kidal is the only one that has not yet been handed over to the Malian authorities. Initially scheduled for mid-November, the UN peacekeeping force has announced that it will be leaving this base earlier than planned. The peacekeepers will leave the area as early as next week. At the end of October, in principle, we won't be there anymore, says a MINUSMA official. He added that the situation was becoming increasingly untenable for the troop-contributing countries. On Thursday, the local UN office evacuated its non-essential personnel from Kidal. The UN has also indicated that non-transportable materials such as explosives and ammunition will be destroyed, and office equipment will probably be donated to the civilian population. The United Nations Multidimensional Integrated Stabilization Mission in Mali, MINUSMA, says it has accelerated its withdrawal because of the very tense security situation in the region. For several weeks now, hostilities have been flaring up between armed pro-independence groups and the regular army for control of the bases left by the MINUSMA. To prevent these bases from falling into the hands of rebel groups in the north, a meeting was held Thursday between the transitional authorities and UN officials in Mali. For the moment, no information has been released.
A more added with a report by WADR's Bamako correspondent Aliyu Cham. Meanwhile, Nigeria's capacity as a host country of the United States Army in the Sahel was strongly debated on the floor of the Congress on Thursday. A move for the withdrawal of the American troops preceded the legislation, which was rejected by a vote of 81 against 11 on the same matter. Had the bill passed, President Joe Biden would have no choice but to recall the troops, a similar mission being carried out by Paris in the aftermath of the July 26 coup in Niamey. Francis Boniface completes the story.
A Republican Senator Rand Paul, who sponsored the legislation, argued that troops were improperly deployed without congressional approval. Paul also fears for the troops getting caught in the crossfire of a conflict in the Sahelian country. Speaking on the contrary was Ben Cardin, chairman of the Senate's Foreign Relations Committee, who believes America's withdrawal could leave a vacuum in the region. A senior U.S. official commenting on the issue clarified that there were no plans to change the U.S. troop presence in the country, especially since Niger is a strong partner in the fight against insurgents. There are about 1,000 American soldiers in the country. Thursday's parliamentary debate followed the U.S.'s declaration this month that there had been a military coup in Niger. Before the acknowledgement, Washington, D.C. announced the suspension of aid to Niamey. Over the decade, U.S. troops have trained Nigerian forces in counter-terrorism and operated 2 military bases, including one that conducts drone missions against Islamic State and an Al-Qaeda affiliate in the region. It is worth noting that France, another ally of Niger with around 1,500 troops, has commenced its withdrawal from the country after the junta demanded their departure. Paris targets December 31 as the final departure date.
Francis Boniface reporting there. Here in Senegal, reports about the state of health of opposition politician Ousmane Sonko's health went viral late Thursday after his lawyer said he had regained consciousness following a brief crisis. This comes just days after the politicians reported lapse into a deep coma while on a hunger strike to protest the arbitrary detention of politicians in the country. Sonko's legal representative, however, stressed that the leader of the now dissolved PASTEF party remains in a precarious condition despite his recovery. James Ojapon tells us more.
The mayor of Zekinshaw had embarked on a hunger strike after he was placed in detention in late July. He later suspended the protest measure following mediation but resumed the hunger strike on October 17th, according to his lawyer, Joan Branco. Although still being treated by a resuscitation team, Sonko's lawyer said he is at risk of a major relapse. Faced with multiple legal cases, Ousmane Sonko is incarcerated for charges including acts that undermine state security, public disturbance, and inciting insurrection. In June, he was acquitted on charges of rape but was convicted of corrupting youth and sentenced to 2 years in prison. The sentencing sparked a nationwide protest that resulted in deadly confrontations between demonstrators and security operatives. Several people died and more than 500 others, including foreigners, were arrested. The Senegalese Ministry of Interior would, after the conviction, remove Ousmane Sonko's name from the electoral roll, a decision overturned by a judge in the southern city of Zekinshaw. The Supreme Court has yet to rule on the decision.
James Ojapon with that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. NewsLink continues.
The Gambia and Senegal have solidified their commitment to bolstering the economic, trade and investment sectors through the signing of a cooperation agreement. The Memorandum of Understanding was formalized during the inaugural edition of the Economic, Trade and Investment Forum in Dakar. This forum is designed to spotlight Gambian culture in Senegal and promote the Gambia within the region. The two-day event aims to enhance the long-standing bilateral ties between both countries. Tawfiq Abdel Nasser reports that notable guests include Senegalese Prime Minister Amadou Ba, Gambian Vice President Dr. Mohamed Jallow, senior government officials, entrepreneurs from both countries, and members of the diplomatic corps.
The two-day convergence aims to not only enhance economic and trade ties between the Gambia and Senegal, but also to create a platform for showcasing the cultural bonds between the two countries. Speaking at the opening of the ceremony, Gambia's Vice President Dr. Mohamed Jallow emphasized the need for collective efforts among African heads of state to improve human capital for continental development.
As we are gathered here today to celebrate, we should take time to carefully reflect on the daunting challenges of development confronting us, which continue to threaten peace and stability of our societies, and sometimes put people in a situation of hopelessness and despair. We must invest to improve our human capital and equip policymakers with cutting-edge knowledge and actionable tools they need to address our shared challenges and achieve a more equitable, sustainable, and prosperous economic system for all.
This Economic Trade and Investment Forum seeks to facilitate investment opportunities and enable Gambian entrepreneurs to access the Senegalese market through special bilateral arrangements. The organizers believe that this initiative will significantly contribute to the promotion of other trade frameworks within the ECOWAS and the African Continental Free Trade Area. Abdullahi Balde is the Director General of GAIPA.
When we look at the theme of the event was coined, which is improving Senegambian brotherhood, moving from formality to simplicity. That is, how do we reduce bureaucracy in terms of business relationship between the Gambia and Senegal. At ECOWAS level, we always say if Gambia and Senegal cannot trade simply, it's not going to happen in ECOWAS because we have more in common.
The forum is set to conclude tomorrow with a dinner gala at the Radisson Blu Hotel in Dakar, featuring performances by both Senegalese and Gambian artists.
Tawfiq Abdel Nasser with that report. Away from Senegal, Guinea appears to be heading towards the start of implementation of the 10-point agenda, the transition timetable as the National Transition Council adopts 2 draft laws. These bills are on the identification of natural persons and the civil status regime. This is a major step towards a return to constitutional order, according to political parties taking part in the dialogue. However, some stakeholders believe that the current electoral register should be revised instead of carrying out a civil status census, which will only delay the process of returning to constitutional regime. Ogeberika reports.
The 2 bills presented by the government to the National Transitional Council are intended to regulate the administrative census for the civil registry. Of the 83 councillors, 63 voted in favor of the 2 bills. This was a relief for Dr. Faya Milimono, president of the Liberal Bloc Party, and Usman Dadi Kamara, president of the Rally of Guineans for Work Party. They are members of the committee monitoring the conclusions of the political dialogue. Fode Balde, head of communications for the Union of Republican Forces Party, says it is possible to have an electoral register without going through the administrative census for civil status purposes. He accuses the junta of wanting to delay the process of returning to constitutional order by going through an unnecessary census. With the adoption of this law, the head of government, Bernard Gomu, says he is reassured that the timetable agreed upon with ECOWAS will be respected. After the vote, the Minister for Territorial Administration suggested that this new law would enable citizens to be counted, the National Civil Status Register to be set up, and then a list of Guineans over the age of 18 to be compiled to form the electoral roll.
Ogeberika with that report. In Nigeria, the opposition Labour Party has rejected the Supreme Court's ruling which affirmed President Bola Tinubu's victory in the February 25 presidential poll. In a unanimous vote, the 7-member panel of the Apex Court dismissed the petitions filed by Peter Obi of the Labour Party and Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party (PDP), challenging Tinubu's win. Reacting to the verdict, Julius Abure, national chairman of the LP party, described the ruling as eroding the democratic gains and values of Nigeria. Abure preached hope to Nigerians while calling on the international community to help work with them through the process.
Disappointed and dismayed by the outcome of the exercise, but we have chosen to trudge on and to remain optimistic of what the future holds for the nation. We weep for our institutions that cannot rise to the occasion and courageously defend democracy and the voices of the people. However, there are great lessons to be learnt. What transpired in Nigeria since February 25th presidential election is a clear testament that our institutions are not working and that we may be sliding towards dictatorship. It is very clear that the executive and the judiciary have all been hijacked. This is so unfortunate for our democracy, and it is even more for the people of Nigeria. All what our forebears taught us has been destroyed within a short space of time because of unbridled ambition of the few. We are also calling on the international community to rise to the occasion to defend democracy in Nigeria. Your voices were loud and clear in condemnation of the outcome of the presidential election. As we approach the next stage of our democratic journey, we call on you to stand by the millions of Nigerians who are already pushed beyond their limits into unnecessary hardship, poverty, and penury.
You are listening to NewsLink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal. Here's a reminder of our top stories. The Malian transitional authorities meet with MINUSMA over the handing over of bases amid intense fighting in the north. Senegalese opposition politician Ousmane Sonko recovers from coma but remains at risk of relapse, according to his lawyer. The Gambia and Senegal strengthen bilateral ties by signing cooperation agreements at the Trade and Economic Forum in Dakar. Still ahead in the news, we have the guest interview and a sports update. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Remember, we stream live on wadr.org as well as on YouTube on WADR News. The practice of female genital mutilation, FGM, is said to be pervasive in central Liberia, Bon County, where babies as young as 2 years old are subjected to the cult as part of initiation into a secret society called the Sandy Society. However, international partners are said to have made a breakthrough as traditional leaders in the region have for the first time agreed to suspend the practice. WADR's Darlington Pop and Morovia reports.
Situated in central Liberia, Bon County is a region where the practice of female genital mutilation has been on the rise for decades, as traditional leaders here survive on the practice as a means of income. Speaking during a ceremony marking the indefinite suspension of the practice, Bon County Superintendent Esther Walker attributed the success to years of negotiation with stakeholders.
We agree unanimously. We accept as a people, as women, as a mother of this county, to turn all of our properties over and suspend it time indefinite.
For Liberian Cultural Ambassador Judy Andy, the traditional leaders' decision to abandon the practice after living off it as a trade for decades is a welcoming development.
We know that women are marginalized, but we want to empower women. So we want violence perpetrated against women to stop and stop now. Based on this ban of FGM in Liberia, we accept it. We feel bad and sad to see our mothers cry, our sisters, but this is for Liberia.
In addition, the United Nations Women's Country Representative to Liberia, Comfort Lamte, assured of a series of programs to provide alternative livelihood opportunities for persons who have in one way or the other relied on FGM for sustenance.
We already started through the alternative livelihood programs in the center. Some are doing agriculture. We have even here in Bon County, in the counties, in all the 11 FGM practicing counties, we have continued to make investments to support women.
International partners insist they will continue to work with the government until female genital mutilation (FGM) is eradicated across the country. For NewsLink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Popper in Monrovia.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is a guest.
Our guest this afternoon is a Nigerian constitutional lawyer, Barrister Fred Nzioko, who joins us with a better analysis of the Supreme Court's ruling that affirmed President Bola Tinubu's victory in the February 25 elections. Since the verdict on Thursday, the ruling camp, which is the All People's Congress APC, has hailed the process and celebrated the legitimization of Tinubu's presidency once again after the May 29 inauguration. But the two major political opposition parties and petitioners, the Labour Party of Peter Obi and the former ruling People's Democratic Party PDP Atiku Abubakar, have strongly rejected the outcome of the entire process. LP is calling for international intervention while alleging the compromise of the judiciary and executive arms of government. First, Barrister Fred reacted to the outcome of the judgment.
In all litigations, there must be a winner and there must be a loser. What is important is that if the winner won fair and squarely, and if the loser lost on basic grounds, and that there was no miscarriage of justice. So if they say they were disappointed or that they did not expect it, it is understandable that as a loser should naturally not be applauding the judgment. But the winner will applaud the judgment. And those of us who are impartial and who are not directly emotionally attached to the matter, we can now say with all level of equanimity and impartiality that it was a good judgment, because they expected a torpedo of the system whereby President Bola Ahmed Tinubu would be said to have not won, and then of course it's expected that such sentiments will be there. But what is important is that there was no miscarriage of justice in any manner or form.
Barrister Fred, staying with the opposition still, Labour Party's national chairman, Joseph Abure, yesterday, Thursday, held a press conference where he said Nigeria's judiciary and the executive have been hijacked and still called on the international community to intervene. So I'm asking, as a constitutional lawyer, is there any other way that this ruling can be examined by any other legal institution?
Well, the Constitution of Nigeria is the ground norm. That is the basic statute that controls everything in Nigeria. It is a constitution that has given birth to all institutions, including the Labour Party itself, and including all levels, tiers of government. And the Constitution, as the ground norm, has said that the Supreme Court is the apex court, and that is the last court of the land. Any appeal arising from Supreme Court can only go to God, in a manner of speaking. There's no other institution in this world that is superior to the Supreme Court of Nigeria, where one could take his matter to. Possibly he may be thinking of going to ECOWAS court, but of course ECOWAS court is not the Supreme Court of Nigeria, and the ECOWAS court is not above Nigerian Supreme Court, and neither is the Supreme Court subservient to the ECOWAS court. Each court has its own defined role, and matters that have been rested by the Supreme Court of Nigeria cannot be litigated at any other court, whether at ECOWAS level, AU level, or even United Nations level.
What does this mean for Nigeria's judiciary?
The judiciary is the bastion of democracy, and the judiciary in Nigeria has been playing its role in defense of Nigerian democracy, in defense of the rule of law, and being the last hope of not only the common man, but the last hope of every citizen, whether common or an elite. Judiciary has maintained that responsibility and has carried out that role. What has happened is that in the 2023 election, there was a clash between judicial understanding by the citizenry and the social media. The citizens deployed social media to malign the judiciary unjustly and unnecessarily. And that is what we have been saying, that Nigerian citizens, and indeed citizens around the world, wherever democracy is practiced, should know there is a difference between the court of law and the court of public opinion. There's a difference between the judicial system and the social media system. The social media platforms are populated by people who, many of them don't even bother to reason or even to understand. They just want to run along with their emotions, their innuendos, and their sentimentalism.
With the Supreme Court's ruling on Thursday, do you think that at least there's a form of closure, at least that we now allow for President Bola Tinubu to carry on with his renewed hope agenda for the country?
It is not just a form of closure. It is a confirmed permanent closure to litigation and issues of contestation with respect to the presidential election. What is now left is for government to deliver good governance to the people. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has given an assurance and a pledge to renew the hope of the people by delivering good governance. So it is his responsibility and the responsibility of those he has appointed at one level or the other to join hands, and including responsibility of even the opposition, because we have no other country other than Nigeria. So all hands must be on deck to move the country to a better pedestal and make it a better country, livable for all of us.
Barrister Fred is a constitutional lawyer in Nigeria. It's now time for sports update. Let's join Sankule Janko.
Hello there, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Morocco remains Africa's top-ranked team, while Cote d'Ivoire dropped 3 places in the latest FIFA World Ranking released on Thursday. The Atlas Lions stay 13th globally after extending their unbeaten run last month. A 3-0 win over Liberia and a 1-1 draw with Ivory Coast kept Morocco top of the continent ahead of Senegal, according to CAF official website. Senegal also held firm at 20th globally and second in Africa, thanks to their 1-0 friendly win over Cameroon. Algeria's 33rd place worldwide is their highest position since June after recent steady improvement under coach Jamel Belmadi. The Desert Foxes beat Cape Verde 5-1 before drawing 1-1 with Egypt in September to close within 4 points of Tunisia in third. But there was a disappointment for the next Total Energies Africa Cup of Nations host Cote d'Ivoire, who dropped 3 places to 52nd in the world and 90th in Africa, CAF reports. The African top 10 in October FIFA rankings are as follows. Morocco stands atop of the pile. Senegal is in second. Tunisia is in third. Algeria is in fourth. Egypt at fifth. Nigeria is sixth. Cameroon is 7th, Mali 8th, Ivory Coast 9th, and Burkina Faso completes the top 10 ranked teams in Africa. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
Sports was brought to you by Sankule Janko. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of NewsLink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Krista Mukedi and Mustafa Sek for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio, English service, and stream live on WADR.org. I am Abdullahi Hassan. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to NewsLink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0, and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County. For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.